Hello, welcome everybody. Well, happy Thursday. Welcome to Fatherly
How's it
Phantom.
going?
Oh man, it's going pretty good. I'm Chris Matthews. Is up top
I'm
over
Matt
here.
Parham.
It's old Matty P. And today we are talking about House of Dragon, Episode 2, The Rogue Prince.
That's right. Lots of history, lots of weird stuff going on in Westeros.
Oh yeah, what's the deal with all those white-haired folks? Those House Targaryen guys. We'll find out today on Fatherly Phantom. Let's hit the intro. All right, guys. So we got to watch House of the Dragon, and I gotta say, I'm really looking forward to this talk with you, Matt. It's gonna be so much
Absolutely.
fun, and spoiler alert here. I rather enjoyed it. So let's go ahead, and what we're gonna do here for everybody who hasn't been on our channel before is we review something and we bring up some sort of a topic as well, something that we are interested in. It could be towards the production of the show that we're watching, or something random that relates to the show that we're watching in some way. We did jousting last week for episode 1, so you get lots of fun little information here on Fatherly Phantom. So we love to do that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, if you like that kind of stuff, this content that we're producing here, I want you to go ahead and hit that old subscribe button, and then get out your dragon and go Dracarys and fire up that like button on this video. Really helps us out with YouTube. It shows that we're getting some traction, and we love your support. So once again, subscribe to our channel today. All right, let's get started with the review. Matt, you're gonna go first. He's gonna go first with his review, then I'll go, and then we're gonna have some nice little history about the House of Targaryen. So, hit him up.
Always a little bit extra here on Fatherly Fan. We like to enhance the viewing experience because I know whenever I watch this kind of stuff, I always have questions. I'm always sitting at the end of it going, I wonder if I just found out a little bit more about this. And so we're going to bring it all to you that we can here. I'm going to start off by giving you my opinion. But first, Chris, I've got one question for you.
Go, brother.
My question is, what is Hodor's favorite breakfast cereal?
Hodor's favorite breakfast cereal.
It's a callback to Game of Thrones, right? Character from
the big guy
from the original series. Yeah. Favorite breakfast cereal.
Captain
Never gonna
Crunch,
guess it.
right?
Raisin Bran.
He's Raisin Bran on his back.
Oh, yeah. Just starting us off on the right foot.
Well done. As you can tell, we're both fathers here, so there's going to be some dad jokes in here, and I love it when Matt gives us another dad joke. I hope we continue this on throughout our broadcast premiere. And shout out to one of our #1 fans out there. They suggested that we call this instead of a show, we call it a broadcast. So guess what? This is the Fatherly Fandom broadcast. So thank you. Tip of the hat to you, Mr. Sawyer. You're awesome. Great suggestion. And keep them coming.
Yeah, probably our most vocal fan so far. So keep the opinions coming, buddy.
All right. So we're going to try to be as succinct as we can be with this podcast here. Not this podcast. Broadcast. Chris, you're already messing it up. Broadcast it up. So we're at 3 minutes. Let's get started with that review. Let's get going. So
yeah,
hit him up, brother.
So I like this episode too, Chris, and I got to say, Game of Thrones does these type of episodes pretty well. It's not action based. Sometimes just looking at story, we're looking at drama, and a lot of conversation going on, which for some isn't that exciting, but for me, in this really, really detailed world, I do enjoy these types of episodes. It's kind of like one of those chapters in the book that gives you a lot of meat and a lot of stuff that will come back later, because as you and I both know from where these stories are going, there was some setup in this episode, some important things that happened. So I very much appreciated that. I liked the setup of a new villain in the Game of Thrones universe, and this of course would be Kragas Drahar, the crab feeder. And you can see a detailed picture of him right down there.
This gorgeous man.
One of the things that really immediately hit me in the face, of course, was the from the first shot of the episode, we just get this extremely grotesque scene. I mean, this scene
Oh,
and the very end of the episode just
right.
haunted my nightmares last night and throughout this week. I mean, oh, to be eaten alive by a crab is cringeworthy, of course, and
I
HBO spares no detail here.
yeah.
What I thought was really fascinating is at the end, we start to get a couple of shots, a little bit of a look at the guy. And this picture down here gets a little bit into the detail. I want everyone to, even though there's a lot of grossness going on here with the scabs and whatnot, what I thought was interesting is that these things look real. I mean, this stuff that they do on the show,
Hats off
be
to the
it,
effects crew.
yeah, yeah. The makeup effects crew is so impressive with this show. I mean, we've got all the type of weird diseases that go on throughout the original Game of Thrones series, and of course, they're continuing some of that on. Maybe this guy's got grayscale, that disease that comes about in the old series. So I don't know exactly the answer to that yet, but I do know that I wanted to call out specifically the prosthetic artist's work this week. We've got listed in the cast and crew for this episode Pat Fowd, Barry Gower, Barry Best, and training on this episode was Abigail Harcourt Smith. Now, these guys were specifically. What's up,
Barry,
man?
just the name Barry Best. It's like he's the Barry Best. I love
That's
that.
true. I didn't even think about that.
I know, right?
Another nice fatherly reference here. Skipped right on by me. I feel
know.
like I've done a disservice to this show.
He was the Barry
But
Best, so
yeah, he did though. I
anyways.
mean, all the prosthetic effects that you just don't see because they look so realistic.
Right.
These people are directly responsible for that. And as I was looking into more of the makeup crew, I mean, there's just dozens of people that are involved in this. And I didn't know that makeup effects are actually done in different departments. There's people that are just
Huh.
in charge of the blood. There's just people that are in charge of the hair. There's
Wow.
people that are in charge of making like all the wigs that you see on the Targaryens that you'll talk about, like the white hair and stuff.
Yeah.
Very specific people work on the different shades of white. I saw an interview with one of the actors, and they were talking about how one of the wigs made the hair look more green against the shade of their face, and
Hmm.
so a lot of detail goes into this stuff, and we saw it on very, very gross display in this episode this week. But it was highly impressive, even though I didn't want to look at it. It because of that
Jeez.
fact, I think these people did an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to say that was one of the highlights for me this week.
Absolutely.
Some of this stuff that I don't know, I was a little on the fence about was that they to me they introduced this character of Lady Lena as a way to kind of get us out of the also ickiness part of the king taking Alicent as his new bride. I mean, we're like happy that he makes that decision as the audience member, but at the same time, she's still really young. And I think that they were trying to throw Lady Lena in there to be like, well, he could have chosen an even younger bride. And they're kind of getting into that whole historical accuracy thing by making these patriarchies, these men in charge pick these very young women, which authentically did happen.
Yeah.
Uh, but I felt like it was done in this case to make it okay that he chose Alicent, a young bride, as well. And to me, that just kind of rang false. Uh, but other than that, I really enjoyed the aesthetic of seeing Dragonstone again, but in a
Yeah.
different way this time. The mist and the dragon like coming
Oh,
through all that, just amazing
beautifully
visual
done.
effects, even without it being an action scene. So
Right.
I think overall, this episode, I'm going to give it probably an 8 out of 10. I think it rose above some things
Yeah.
from the first episode, but still gave us plenty of typical Game of Thrones fodder, including the theme music. What did you think
Oh,
about that? The same theme music as the original series.
yeah, I absolutely love that. And like we got an intro this time around as opposed to the first episode. And I think looking back at Game of Thrones, I think the first episode of Game of Thrones was a cold open as well, literally, because they're at the wall. So
Yeah,
it
that's
was the
true.
same type of thing. So I love that's the one thing I loved about Game of Thrones was that opening sequence, and I was glad to see that there. I'm glad that they're actually, and they talked about this in some interviews. They were at first they were only going to use music that wasn't very similar to Game of Thrones, but then they decided, no, we need to actually kind of bring this stuff together, so ground you in the world of Westeros. So that's why we
Yeah.
have a lot more of these themes coming in, and I absolutely love it. And I love that Game of Thrones theme, and it just brings me back, makes me feel good. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't distracting for me at all, and I'm glad that they
No,
included
sir.
it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, 8 out of 10 for me overall for the episode. Yeah, it's one of these middle episodes, but still plenty of stuff to enjoy
Lots
in
of stuff.
my book.
Yeah. Awesome.
What did you
Awesome.
think, buddy?
Yeah, so House of Dragons, this was called The Rogue Prince, like we said earlier. I was checking it out too, because I wanted to kind of see, IMDb has been having their stuff, so I was like, what else can I check here to see kind of what people are actually thinking about this? So I checked out Rotten Tomatoes. So I think from now on, I'm going to pull from Rotten Tomatoes as much as I can, if that's okay with you, our community out there. So for House of Dragons season 1, episode 2, The Rogue Prince, I had about an 85% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a fresh tomato.
Sure.
Tomato. And the critic rating was very high, 97%. And I could see why, because there's a lot of intricate things in this episode that just make just plot. I absolutely enjoyed this episode for sure. It was directed by Greg Yaitanes. We're gonna butcher these names here, sorry. And it was written by Ryan Condal. He's the showrunner as well. He's gonna write a lot of these episodes. Oh man, but I just to like I said before, spoiler alert, I enjoyed this episode quite a bit. Everybody in here was bringing their A game with their acting. It was phenomenal. Yeah, we didn't get a lot of action, but at the same time, every single scene had a purpose, and every single scene, these actors were bringing everything that they had, and I was just awesome. I got to watch it a couple of times, and it was definitely enjoyable, even more the second time around, too. And that's when you know it's a good episode, when you can watch it multiple times, and you find you enjoy it even more with all the intricacies that you see. So, for me, looking at this episode, I kind of try to group the episodes into what's the overall theme of this show or this particular episode. And so for me, what drew me in and what I think this episode is all about is it's all about choices. And so you see a lot of choices in this, and we always have these choices that ultimately affect us moving forward in life. And those repercussions from the choices that we make here, that they make in this episode, will have profound impacts on future events in Westeros. They absolutely do. So every little choice that we see in this episode will impact the story going on forward, even into Game of Thrones. So we see King Viserys the First, who's played by Paddy Considine, the guy from Hot Fuzz that we mentioned last week. He has to make that choice about who to marry, like you were talking about, Matt. And he has to choose what is politically sound by marrying his cousin Rhaenys. I think we said that it was his sister last week too, but it's actually his cousin. Rhaenys is the woman who would be queen. That was his cousin who got passed over for to lead Westeros. So Rhaenys and Corlys Velaryon, they're married and they have a daughter, a 12-year-old daughter, Lady Laena. And so they propose marrying her. And we ultimately see from the end that he kind of chooses more from the heart with Alicent Hightower, played by Olivia Cook. One could argue, and I don't know if you have caught this too, and you probably have, Matt. The choice that he makes isn't really his choice either. Like either choice isn't really the king's choice, because the King's Hand, Otto Hightower, played by Rhys Ifans, the guy who plays the lizard in Amazing Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Go check it out. He's phenomenal in this. We didn't mention him last week, but oh my god, he again bringing his A game. He is a powerful presence in this show, and he's just chewing up the scenery. I love it. So he's had a hand, pun intended, in instructing his daughter to go visit the king, go be there with the king, go comfort the king. So he's playing Viserys, trying to get his daughter to be liked by him and be, thought of him warm regards. And so he ultimately makes that choice to choose her as his bride over what would be politically sound for him, what would be good for Westeros as a whole. He chooses her. And so we also see two other choices. We see Rhaenyra, who's played by Millie Alcock. And this is something we're going to see in future episodes, is this character of Rhaenyra is actually going to be played by two different actresses, because there's some time jumps in here. And if you didn't know, this episode actually takes place about 6 months after the first episode. And be prepared, we're going to see another time jump here in the next episode, in the next one. So there's going to be some pretty major time jumps throughout this season. Yeah.
They're going to do that already.
Already?
Man, it's kind of, and this is something we obviously don't want to spoil, but with the timeline that happens in the books, we kind of knew that there's going to be a very lengthy story being told here.
Right.
But I would have assumed that they're going to
take their time.
Show will go on for years. Yeah, that they'll let these younger actors grow into the role. But they're going with somebody else, huh?
Yeah, they are. So we'll see a different actor play Rhaenyra in upcoming episodes. I don't think the next one, but a couple episodes down the road. So right now it's Millie Alcock. And it's funny too, if you look up on Wikipedia or any of that stuff, it names a different actor, but it's Millie Alcock that's playing this character right now. She's a younger Australian actress. So she makes her first choice, her first real choice for the kingdom in selecting a new Kingsguard, because one of the members of the Kingsguard passed away, so she's got to make this choice. And she makes a very practical choice, a decision that's very practical over a political choice, which Otto, the King's Hand, was trying to get her hey, this knight is good for, this and, that kind of stuff. And she's like, no, do any of these guys have experience? I mean, have any of them actually seen battle? And so she chooses Sir Criston to be the Kingsguard because he does have experience in battle. So she chose a very decisive and practical choice, and it was really cool to see with her character and her mindset and how she would lead if she was queen.
Now, a very informative scene.
Absolutely. So I really appreciated that. So again, choices. We're seeing choices throughout this episode. And this week, surprisingly, I found Matt Smith's portrayal of Daemon Targaryen in the episode was far improved from the premiere. I don't know what it was. Maybe I'm just getting used to it, but I see him blending into the character more. He's disappearing into his performance, and he had an outstanding performance with Millie Alcock in Dragonstone there. That was the standout performance for me, was that exchange. When Rhaenyra confronts her uncle and peaceably retrieves the dragon egg from Daemon. He stole it from the king and everything, and it was the exact same egg that Rhaenyra picked out for her little brother who passed away and everything. So it was such a you felt the heaviness of that situation. She's standing there, and it's just, it's like, you could end this right now. You could kill me and it's over. But you see Daemon, and you see how he's thinking politically, he's thinking emotionally and everything else, and you see all that stuff without actually being expressed in words. And this is what I love. I love being able to show something, don't explain it, because you get all of that information just by those looks between those two. That they Daemon, the uncle, really does care about Rhaenyra, and that he's in this situation where he's like, I should be in charge, and I should probably kill you, but he doesn't. He returns the egg, and this gets peaceably resolved. And that was a beautiful scene. So that was like the highlight for me of this episode, was that scene in itself. That tension and that emotion between those two characters was absolutely great. Matt Smith, great job. I'm starting to like this character a lot more. And you know, and once again, these were about choices. That was Daemon's choice. He made a choice to peaceably throw the egg back back to Rhaenyra. And the other standout scene that I have to note here for Millie Alcock, and she is the MVP of this episode, at least for me, is when she finds out that the woman who her father is chosen to be married is her best friend, Alicent. She had no idea Alicent Hightower was going to be chosen as his wife, as well as everybody else. Corlys was very pissed as well.
I couldn't tell in that scene. You think that she's upset
Absolutely.
at Alicent?
Oh,
or
yeah.
do you think she's upset at her dad?
Both. I think she's upset at both of them, and you get so much of that. And when she looks at Alicent, and this actress is doing an amazing performance with this. You can see it all in her eyes. She's got that reserved disappointment. She knows she has to keep it together and everything, but you can tell there's disappointment, betrayal in there, and it's perfectly encapsulated in her eyes without her saying a thing. And then she walks out. So you get a lot of that tension there too. And so, man, hats off to you. That was such a really awesome scene, very tense. And again, the king makes this choice that's going to affect everything.
I also thought that the scene demonstrated how Daemon is ultimately right, that this is a weaker king. You know, to allow one of his council and his daughter to just walk away after he makes this announcement, obviously as a sign of disrespect, he allows it to happen, and he doesn't do anything about it. And it just goes to show that this figure of Corlys Velaryon, he's going to be some kind of opposition. Of course, we get the tease of that at the very end of the episode, but by him being able to just walk away unscathed from the council of the king, it shows that Viserys's power is very much waning.
He's very soft, and he often makes decisions based off of, you know, his feelings instead of what is politically or, you know, decisively a better decision. So he shouldn't have chosen Alicent Hightower at all. He unfortunately should have gone with the 12-year-old Lady Laura, you know. And everybody was telling him to do that. They're like, this is what you have to. Everybody, even the Hand was saying to do that. Like, that's the choice you should make. That's a pragmatic choice that you should make. But he goes with his heart. Same thing with his brother. He doesn't attack his brother. He doesn't go after him for taking over Dragonstones, because he's like, he's my brother. He's too soft for this position. He's not going to take the hard stance. And you know, he's a very weak king when it comes to this. And overall, so let's wrap this up for my review. Overall, I love this episode, and I applaud the performances that they made, and the little action that they had in it was very compelling. I love seeing the dragons as well, but this is what made the first few seasons of Game of Thrones so amazing too, so well done in my opinion. Is you don't have to have a lot of action. You can have a lot of drama through the characters, through well-developed characters that interact with each other and present real tension. So I absolutely love that. I love that slow burn as well. I love the idea of more action later on in the season. We get a big, huge thing that happens. Then they did that a lot in Game of Thrones. So I absolutely appreciate these episodes. I loved it. My score is 9 out of 10. So, and it's a solid A for me for this show. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, what about all of the history behind the Targaryen line? We've got to flesh that out, because it can be arduous to sift through the details. So lay it on us, Chris.
Yeah. So if you're like me, there are so many houses and things like that, and you're like, okay, you know, we have these, you know, Corlys Velaryon, and we have the Targaryens. What's the deal with all these different guys with white hair? It's like, what's going on here? And even I, who have read some of the books and I've watched Game of Thrones, still a little confused about like what's exactly happening in the history behind this. So I kind of went through and compiled some stuff. So I got a little graphic here, and I have it on the screen, Matt, over my picture. You know, it's like I'm behind the picture, but this is the family tree of the Targaryen line. So we're going to kind of start from the beginning here and then go into everything else. And I'm going to pull up a map of Valeria, so just so you can see the scale of Valyria, which is like 3 times the size of Westeros. So it's Essos, so it's to the east of Westeros. Fancy that, right? So, and we saw Valyria. We saw the model of old Valyria in the king's, you know, in his bedroom, I guess. He's got a big model in his bed. He's a big geek, so he's like us, you know. So he's got this huge model of that, and he's kind of explaining how they built it on a volcano, same as Dragonstone and everything else. And I thought that was really cool, and that's where their magic and the Dragon Lords lived as well. So Valyria, let's talk a little bit about this. So in House Targaryen, now House Targaryen was one of actually 40 Dragon Lords. So they weren't the only ones that were dragon riders and everything like that, but they were one of 40 Dragon Lords of this empire that rose up in Essos, like I have on the map over here. And it was called Valyrian Freehold, and it dominated most of the known world. As you can see on the map, it's pretty big, so they dominated most of the world, and they reigned until the Doom of Valyria, which made the Targaryens the last surviving Dragon Lords. Everybody else was wiped out. So the last surviving Dragon Lords were the Targaryens. And they survived because Daenerys, the dreamer, convinced her father, like they constantly have dreams and things like that to predict the future, things like that. You know, there's magic in this world, in this universe. So she had a dream, and she convinced her father to leave and settle in Dragonstone, that island that we see that Daemon has taken over. Dragonstone would become the seat of power for this Targaryen family. So then, a little while later, once they get established in Dragonstone, we get a guy named Aegon and his 2 sisters, and he married his sisters. He's got 2 sister wives. So Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives, Rhaenys and Visenya, along with the last 3 dragons in the world. There's only 3 dragons left. They conquered Westeros and united the 7 kingdoms together. There's a lot more detail to that, and you can look at that in the wiki, and I'll link some of this stuff in the description below as well. So if you want to read further, you can. I'm just trying to sum this up. There's a lot of history, so we're just trying to get you the basics here on Fatherly Fandom. So they united the 7 kingdoms, and we know it was a dream now that motivated them to do this. And we found that out in episode 1, that they foresaw this future winter that was going to come and destroy the world. So they wanted to unite the 7 kingdoms so that they could be strong and fight against that. And that was just revealed in the last episode. So that's one of the reasons why the Targaryens went and conquered. So after Aegon was crowned, he was known as Aegon of House Targaryen, first of his name, King of the Andals, and the first man, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. So it's, you know, I love that title. I wish I had a title like that, right? It's freaking awesome. Chris Matthews, Lord of the Post Falls House and Medical Laboratory Scientist, and Protector of German Shepherds and 2 kiddos. I don't know. So just spitballing here. So yeah, he's Matty P, Mr. Pa Hammerin. So he has this long title now. He's crowned King of the Realm and whatnot. And it actually affected the time as well. So you know how we have like BC and AC in our time? This actually affected the time. This is how they catalog events now. So there's a time before the conquest, you know, BC, and then after the conquest, AC. So they catalog the time from that moment on when he was crowned king. Okay, so let's go in our little time machine here. Fast forward a little bit. We're gonna go a little bit more recent and kind of what we got to see in the first episode. So fast forward to the start of the show, we see King Jaehaerys the First Targaryen. He's that old guy that we saw in the beginning that had to make the really, really hard decision. He was the grandson of Aegon the Conqueror, and this was and he lived a long time. This dude, he outlived his children. So like the children that he had were dead. So he didn't have a successor. And so he had a grandson, Viserys the First, and he had a granddaughter on his other child's line, Rhaenyra. I'm butchering these names. I do apologize, folks. And this dude, he reigned, and for like 50 years, apparently he had peace across Westeros and everything. So he was probably like the best king. And you can kind of see it in, you know, the design and everything else that they portrayed in that first episode. It's just elaborate, lavish and everything. And you see it going into this show that there's not a lot of knights that have battle experience because this is a time of peace. It was 50 years. So he reigned and he did a really good job. That's Jaehaerys, the first Targaryen. And he, yeah, Viserys, the first, let's go into him. Let's talk about that dude. So the king, boom, right there. That's this weak king that we're talking about. Viserys the first Targaryen. He was the 5th king in the Targaryen dynasty. So, 4th was Jaehaerys, his grandfather. He was the 5th. Viserys rode Balerion the Black Dread, and they kind of talked about this a little bit when Lady Laura was like, "You rode the dragon." That's what she was talking about. It was Balerion the Black Dread when he was younger, and then the dragon died of old age, and so he didn't ride after that. And his daughter was well, the other kid that had more of a claim. So let's talk about this. Was Rhaenys, and she was the only child of Jaehaerys' first son, and this is why she was being considered in the first place to succeed as ruler of Westeros. It was because she was the first son, you know, in Westeros, and, you know, in medieval times, in monarchies, usually the first son is the one to become king. So it kind of works along that succession line. And so she was the daughter of the oldest son of Jaehaerys. And Viserys was the oldest son of Jaehaerys' second son. So this is where the issue came to picking a successor, and why the Great Council, which we could see in episode 1, was gathered in 101 AC. So that's after the conquest, 101 years after Aegon the Conqueror was crowned king of Westeros. So the Targaryens didn't have a well-established succession, so there wasn't any really established succession laws, because it never come up before that, like, they didn't have a male heir to sit on the throne, at least for the Targaryen house and everything. So that's why they brought together this this committee and this council. And some thought that Rhaenys should rule. Others thought that her oldest son, Leonor Valerian, should rule. And the council set the precedent at this point for the oldest male. Doesn't matter where he came from in the line. They set this precedent that the oldest male heir should inherit the throne. And that's where Viserys the first Targaryen became king. He succeeded Jaehaerys, his grandfather. So Viserys was voted in by a wide margin. And his queen, Aemma Arryn, only gave him one child, which was Rhaenyra Targaryen, which we are seeing in the show. And so we are definitely in the show's time now. So let's pull up her picture real quick. Boom, boom, there she is. We have seen her. And she was the only child. And so this is where the issue came up when his son and his wife died. King Viserys' wife died. He kind of went against the precedent that was set during the council. And so he named his successor to be Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, or Ray. God, I suck at these names. But he chose his daughter. And shunned his brother Daemon, who by all rights should have, you know, been the successor to the throne. And so he's definitely pissed, and he's got a good reason to be pissed. I would be too, man. It's like, brother, come on, dude, I'm here for you. But once again, Viserys is not thinking of the most practical decision. He's not thinking of the thing that the realm is going to accept. And in the episode that we've watched, Rhaenyra, the queen that never was, she tells Rhaenys, I mean, these are very similar names, so it's kind of hard to tell between them, but she was telling him, like, this realm's never going to accept a lady on the throne. They're all going to rebel. It's like, that's not the way of things. And so she's kind of learned that the hard way, and she realizes how this kingdom is going to react to this. So it's not the most practical thing. And he did go against that precedent of having the oldest male heir inherit the throne. The very thing that got him on the throne too. So it's like, okay, he went against that. So Viserys was voted in, like I said, by a wide margin. And there we are. There's where we're at when it comes to this line of Targaryens from, when they started off in Essos, all the way from Aegon the Conqueror to where we're at in House of the Dragon. So the other family that, I think we need to shed some light on is the House Valerian. And this is another thing. It's like, I didn't realize. I just thought they were all Targaryens. I didn't realize that there was a whole nother line that came from Valeria. And so we have this guy named Corlys Valerian, and he is married to Rhaenyra, the king's cousin, the queen that never was, and everything. And they are one of the few houses of the Seven Kingdoms, besides the Targaryens, that originated in Essos. And they rule Driftmark, which is the island where the crab catcher is. What did we decide on? How his name was?
Crab feeder.
Crab feeder, yeah, where the crab feeder is attacking right now. So he's attacking.
Greyhouse.
Gregos, Drahas, Bratas is what we're calling them. So they rule Driftmark, and it's actually an island that's in the Blackwater Bay, which we've heard about in Game of Thrones, and it's located west of Dragonstone. So both of these lines from Valeria like to settle on these islands outside of Westeros. So the House Valerian origin, though they're not dragon lords, they do not ride dragons or anything like that. They are important to trade and commerce of the Valerian freehold from back in the day, from when that was established, when that empire was going. They actually settled in Driftmark, actually before the Targaryens went to Dragonstone. So before the fall of Valeria, they're like hightailing it out of here, went to Driftmark. And currently we have the House Valerian is Corlys Valerian. He's in the top seat of that. He's known as the Sea Snake, and his house, fun information, is actually richer than the House Lannister at this point in time. So he's very powerful. He has the largest navy in the world, so very powerful navy. So he's got a lot of clout, a lot of power. So it really was a bad decision to not make this guy happy. It's going to cause repercussions as we go along in this show. And he has two children, his daughter Laenor Valerian and son Lenore Valerian. And in season 2, fun fact, season 2 of Game of Thrones, House Valerian was actually in support of Stannis Baratheon for the Iron Throne. So they were mentioned before in season 2. So that's their line. They're merchants. They are sea merchants and everything like that. They are not dragon lords like the Targaryens, but they come from a bloodline from Valeria. So there you go. There's a down and dirty history of Targaryens, Valeria, and those lines, which we are seeing in this show. Hopefully it helps that out as well. Oh no, I think we lost Matt. Oh no. Are you there? Okay. It pinged at me. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Very interesting stuff.
Oh no, yeah, it's saying there's a poor connection now. You're tiny Matt again for some reason. Ugh. But so that's my information on House Targaryen and House Valerian. So there you go.
This week's episode.
Yeah. Hopefully that was inspiring or eye-opening for you, or whatever you might want. But it sounds like both of us really did enjoy this episode. I really did. I'm really looking forward to next week's episode, and I can't wait to see it and talk to you, Matt, about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to see how far into the story they take this season.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple interviews with the actors, and it's going to be a wild ride. So stay tuned.
A wild dragon ride, if you will. Good sir. Yeah. So, and once again, if you enjoyed this content, if you enjoyed this episode, why don't you go ahead and fire up that subscribe button, click on notifications, like our page, Dracarys! Blow your dragon fire on all over that like button on this video if you can. It'll really help us out. And leave your comments about this episode. Leave your comments so that we can see what you guys thought of the episode. If you enjoyed it, if you didn't, let us know. All opinions are valid. We like to hear all of those. So join the conversation, and we will bring that up in episodes to come. All right. So
yeah, and join us next time for our broadcast on She-Hulk episode 3.
Trace. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Join us for that. And Matt, you got anything else before we depart these lands of Westeros?
No, I'm just really excited for all the content we're going to be reviewing over the next couple of weeks and months. So, yeah, stay tuned.
Right on, right on, right on. Little Matthew McConaughey for you there. All right, all right, all right. All right, guys, from our families to yours, have a good one. All right?
Have a good one.